investigation team found their tent, but it was torn. The fabric of the tent had been cut from the inside as the threads were sticking outward. It seemed as if the hikers had torn the tent in fear and fled. Some footprints were also found. Imprints of shoes and bare feet were visible in the snow. The hiker's camera was discovered, containing some strange photographs. However, the full criminal investigation was conducted through the photographs and the expedition register. Despite daily entries, this case has remained unsolved for the past 65 years. This is the story of the Mountain of the Dead, an incident known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. Welcome once again to Tales of the Past. On the morning of January 23, 1959, a team of 10 hikers boarded a train and set off for the Ural Mountain range in Siberia. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, led by Igor Dyatlov. They kept a register with them, recording every moment of their journey. During the train ride, group leader Igor Dyatlov made an entry in the register, which translates to, "I wonder what new things await us on this journey. What new experiences are in store for us?" For the next few days, the group traveled by train, bus, truck, and horse before finally continuing on foot and skis. On January 28th, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and decided to return. The remaining 9 hikers continued their trek. Here is a photograph of the moment when Yuri bid farewell to his companions, unaware that this was the last time he would see them alive. The 9-member group continued their journey through the icy wilderness, documenting every moment through their diary and cameras. The photos and register entries from this time appear completely normal. On February 1st, they reached the base of a mountain, which the local people called the Mountain of the Dead. They spent the entire day climbing and eventually decided to set up camp just a few meters below the summit. These are some of the last photographs recovered from their camera. The final entry in their register translates to, "It is hard to imagine such peace on these mountains, miles away from human civilization, with strong winds howling around us." Everything up to this point was documented in their register. But what happened next? No one knows. The expedition was supposed to last 16 days, after which they had planned to climb down and send a telegraph confirming their safety. However, even 15 days after the scheduled end date, there was no news from the group leader or any team member. Concern grew among their relatives and friends. Finally, a volunteer search team was assembled. On February 26th, they discovered the missing hikers' camp on the mountainside. The scene suggested that something had gone terribly wrong. The tent was covered in a thin layer of snow, and all the hikers' equipment remained inside in perfect condition. However, the tent fabric had been cut open from the inside using a knife, suggesting that something inside the tent forced them to flee in panic. The next day, the search team began looking for the missing hikers. Near the ripped tent opening, footprints were found in the snow, leading downhill. Some footprints were from boots, while others were barefoot. Interestingly, the footprints were not spread far apart, meaning the hikers were not running but moving calmly, which is bizarre considering they had abandoned their tent in extreme cold. The footprints lasted for 500 meters, after which they disappeared, probably covered by later snowfall. Following the direction of the footprints, the search team reached a cedar tree. Here, they found burnt remains of a small bonfire and the frozen bodies of Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. It took another 2 months to find all 9 bodies. The first 2 hikers were found wearing very little clothing, no jackets, pants, gloves, hats, shoes, or any other cold weather gear. They were dressed in thin shirts and underwear, despite the fact that the recorded temperature at the time was minus 30 degrees Celsius, that is minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The cedar tree also had strange marks. Its branches were broken up to 5 meters high, as if someone had tried to climb it in the dark to escape something. The next 3 bodies were found buried in the snow between the tent and the cedar tree. Unlike the first 2, they had some warm clothing, but no shoes or gloves. Their body positions suggested that they were trying to return to the tent, but collapsed and died on the way. Some of these bodies had injuries, but the medical examiner concluded that all 5 hikers had died of hypothermia, a condition where prolonged exposure to cold drains body heat. However, the last 4 bodies were found 75 meters in the opposite direction from the cedar tree, buried under a rocky slope. These hikers suffered severe injuries. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had broken ribs. The medical examiner ruled out any animal or human attack, stating that these injuries were too extreme to have been caused by a person or an animal. Investigators believe the hikers fell from a height. The possibility of an animal attack was also considered because 2 bodies had missing eyes and a woman's tongue was gone. However, the most shocking discovery was that 2 shirts and 1 pair of pants found at the crime scene contained radioactive material. Initially, the authorities suspected murder, that someone had killed the hikers. But on May 28th, the criminal investigation was closed because there was no evidence of foul play or any signs that they had harmed each other. So, what exactly happened to these 9 people? Why did they cut open their tent from the inside and flee? What was so urgent that they couldn't use the tent's entrance? Whatever it was, they felt safe after escaping the tent because they stopped running and start walking normally after leaving the tent. According to the official report, 6 of the 9 hikers died from hypothermia, but their injuries made it difficult to believe that they simply froze to death. By this time, the case had gained international attention.
В горах Северного Урала группы американских документалистов.
The hikers' families and many others challenged the Soviet Union's hypothermia explanation, believing the government was hiding the real cause of death. The biggest suspicion arose when radioactive particles were found on the hikers' clothing. Everyone thought of nuclear tests. This was during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. Only a few years earlier, the US had dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, showcasing its power to the world. In response, the Soviet Union also began conducting secret nuclear tests. Many believed the Soviet government had conducted a nuclear test near the mountain, exposing the hikers to radiation. The government then covered up the case by blaming hypothermia. Investigation team was looking at the case from different angles. At one point, they considered an avalanche as a possible cause. Maybe the group heard an avalanche approaching at night and panicked, cutting open the tent and running into the cold. But the avalanche theory had major flaws. If there had been an avalanche, the tent would have been buried under a thick layer of snow, but it was found with only a thin layer. Igor Dyatlov, the group leader, was an experienced hiker and skier. He would never have set up camp in an avalanche-prone area. Over 100 expeditions were conducted in the same location after the incident, and none reported avalanche conditions. Avalanches typically occur in April and May when the snow starts melting, but this incident happened in February when conditions were stable. This is the last photo taken from one of the hikers' cameras on the night of the incident. It appears to show a bright light in the darkness, but the camera's focus is unclear. This led to new theories. Some believe this is an image of a UFO. Others think it is a rocket, meteorite, or emergency tent light. However, whatever it was, rocket, UFO, or meteorite, it did not crash near them because no evidence of a crash was found, no debris, impact site, or burns in the snow. Whatever it was, it remained unsolved. Our questions were still unanswered. What was the cause of the Dyatlov Pass incident? Why was tent torn from inside? How did some hikers took life-ending injuries? Why they wore so less clothes in negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit? To uncover the truth, we must turn to the tent, which is the first link in the chain. In earlier photos, an exhaust pipe can be seen coming out of the tent, suggesting they had a stove inside. Stove was used as cooked meal was found inside the tent. It is possible that when the exhaust pipe was closed, some burning embers remained, causing a fire inside the tent. When the tent was found, the exhaust pipe was missing. If the stove was not vented properly, toxic smoke could have filled the tent, causing breathing problems. This might explain why they cut open the tent to escape. There are evidence to support this theory. Some hikers had burn marks on their bodies and clothes. Blood was found in some of their mouths, which can happen after inhaling excessive smoke. After escaping the tent, they walked away and started a fire near a cedar tree. The investigation team later found the burnt remains of the fire near the tree. The 4 hikers, who wore more clothes, likely went further into the forest to gather firewood. However, they may have triggered a small avalanche from a nearby rocky slope, which caused severe injuries when they fell onto rocks. Some suffered skull fractures, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. Those wearing less clothes were near the bonfire. The remaining 3 tried to return to the tent, but collapsed from exhaustion and froze to death. Awaiting them, the 2 hikers near bonfire also freeze to death after the fire extinguished. About the radioactive theory, everything is slightly radioactive, but the hikers' clothing had abnormally high radiation levels. One of the hikers, Alexander Kolovatov, had previously worked at a nuclear facility. Another, Georgy Krivonyshenko, worked at a top-secret Soviet nuclear plant. The radioactive clothes found belonged to these 2 hikers. The other hikers' clothes had normal radiation levels. The missing eyes and tongue could have been the result of animal scavenging. If the bodies were left exposed in the snow, small animals could have fed on the soft tissue. Today, it has been 65 years since the Dyatlov Pass incident. Of the 10-member group, only Yuri Yudin survived because he left the expedition early due to illness. He lived until the age of 76 and passed away on April 27, 2013. If you have an alternate theory to what could have happened, please let us know in the comments section. I hope you find our work worth your time. If so, leave a like to let us know. Until next time.